Welcome to Module 2, where we talk all things language and communication, and we're going to get right into it and get started with receptive language. Receptive language is how your child understands language. So this is not what they are expressing. This is solely what they are taking in, processing, and understanding. So we're going to get started with the next slide. Hola, ¿cuántas personas hablan español? Sí, lo siente, yo hablo español horrible y hace 5 años y mi español ha empeorado, pero levantar las manos si todos ustedes piensan que son inteligentes. Levantar las manos. Ok, levantar las manos si todos ustedes piensan que son bonitas. All right, so that was my 30-second horrible production of Spanish. I am so sorry to all the Spanish speakers out there. But if you don't speak Spanish, that was probably a little confusing. I was speaking English, and then all of a sudden I switched, and I was asking you to do something. I looked confused. I asked you to raise your hand if anybody got that. I showed you my hand. I circled the hands on the slide in front of you. And what I said was, how many people out there speak Spanish? And if you do, I'm sorry because my Spanish is horrible. But how many of you think that you are intelligent? Raise your hand. How many of you think that you're pretty? Raise your hand. Obviously, if you don't speak Spanish, maybe even if you do, and I butchered it really bad, you were confused. You were frustrated. It was obvious that maybe I was asking you to do something. I may have looked a little confused, which you understood, and it didn't make sense. So this is just a 30-second snippet of what your child might be going through when they walk into an environment and there is all this language that they cannot process. Some of you might have just been like, I'm going to fast forward or click on to the next slide. This lady's lost it. And you gave up on me. That's why I keep it short. But what's important to show here is that maybe when I put my hand up, you might have been like, okay, she's talking about something. Or when I circled the hands on the slideshow, maybe you knew something that I was talking about a hand. Maybe you understood a couple words from back in high school Spanish, and you were able to put together habla, so I'm speaking Spanish, and something like that. Basically, language is super complicated, and we use so much of it that if your child has any receptive language differences, it can be very overwhelming. It can be scary at times, and they need cues. They need help. And so who's going to help them? We are. And they need to trust us to help them. So another example I want to use is if anybody has ever been to a nail salon where people are speaking a different language. I use this example because it's one that a lot of people have said really resonates with them, and they always get worried that the people are talking about them. Or if you go to another country and people are speaking all around you in a different language and maybe they're pointing, you think they're talking about you. Maybe they're pointing to something behind you. But we always are taking in input, whether we speak the language or not, which is really important because even if your child can't understand everything you're saying, they're taking in some of it. So we really, like we did in the regulation, we want to be aware of our energy and how we're using language. And them trusting us is huge. So go back to the nail salon. And you're at a nail salon, and your nail technician does not speak the same language as you, and she starts putting this puke green color on your nails. And I'm like, no, I wanted light pink. I'm a very plain person. I don't want this. And she's like, no. And she's putting the stuff on your nails. You might get really frustrated, and then she might say, wait, and show you that this is like a new way to help your nails grow and be stronger. And it's not actually the color. The color is going to disappear or something. That might be a really awkward situation. But if you had been going to that nail technician for years and you trusted her, you guys had a little bit of a relationship, even if you couldn't understand everything that she was saying, you would trust her a little bit that, hey, this person knows me. They know I'm really plain. They know I wouldn't pick out that color. So maybe I should go with it. So what I'm saying here is if you can build that relationship and have that trust, even if your child cannot understand everything that's going on, they'll go with it for a little while. So how can we help them better understand the things? Now they trust us. How can we help them? Okay, so consigue la copa. Once again, I'm losing it. I'm going back to Spanish. If I said consigue la copa to you and you don't speak Spanish, you would have no idea that I said get the cup. Now, think of the word cup. I have a bunch of cups on this slide. What cup am I talking about? I just said get the cup. Maybe they wanted their coffee cup or their wine cup or their solo cup, sippy cup. So there are so many cups. However, if I showed you a picture of the cup, you would understand it much more. Or if I use more descriptive language like the red cup, that might get you closer to the eventual cup that I was actually looking for the whole time, which was this one with the straw. So the more visual cues we can use to support our children, the more likely they are to be able to pick up on the words and learn the language that we're trying to teach them. So that works for nouns. So we have a bunch of nouns. I've gone into families' homes and I have created lots of things that will have pictures all over to help the child understand what we're saying. So a lot of the times we'll use visuals to show what I'm expecting them to do. So if I want them to get their shoes, I might have a picture of their shoes and point to it and be like, get your shoes. And the picture of the shoes can trigger them to understand and eventually pick up that word. So that works for nouns. What about verbs? Kids usually understand nouns first. Verbs are more abstract. We have a lot of double meaning words. We have a lot of things that we use. If I said slide, that could mean slide down, slide into home plate. That's not the best example, sorry. But verbs are more abstract. They're really hard. So if I said go to the car and the kid processed car, they might go get their toy car. They process that noun at the end of the word. So I need to show them what go means because that will lead them to eventually realize, hey, we are going in the car that moves to go to the store. So really, we want to take a step back from language and think about how we can break it down. So a picture, you can print a picture. Everyone's got their phones. You can just click a picture and help understand language in real time. It's so nice that with technology sometimes. But verbs are a little more abstract. So what do? We can take a video. I can take a video of walking to the car and then go show my child, go get in the car, and they might be able to process what I'm expecting from them, and they won't concentrate so much on the word car. They'll concentrate on the action because they watched me do it. So it's really important that we try to find ways to break it down to help them be most effective communicators. All right. So how else can we do that? Let's get one. Is the good old visual schedule. So a lot of these times we use these in school a lot, and parents are a little reluctant to use them at home, which I don't blame you. They're a little more strict, and sometimes home is a little more relaxed, and I get that. But these are nice ways. These are some I just made for a family for summertime. So the weekly schedule over here, it shows when they're going to be at home and when they have something else planned. Now, if it rains on Tuesday and we can't go to the park, we're going to need to put a home day picture on here to change that up and explain that it's raining, we can't go. Or we can be flexible. If it's really nice on Monday, we want to go to the park, we might want to switch that and be like, oh, Monday's going to be our park day. And the kid might be more receptive to it. We still might have trouble with the changing of the routine, but when it's concrete and it's on this visual, kids understand it a lot more than me being like, oh, it's nice, let's go. What happened? So the other is the daily schedule. So these you probably have seen if you've worked with a speech therapist or a special education teacher. And they really break it down into like what steps we're going to do. You can cross them out with a dry erase marker, or you can use Velcro and move them to the done column. This one was really easy for a parent, so she could just cross it out and reuse it daily. But it shows kind of what are my expectations. A lot of times, like I said, there's so much language coming at them. There's so much stimuli. Their senses are overloaded. Kids need to understand their environment. So what is expected of me? Where do I go? What do I do? For how long? And what comes next? These are the ones that we try to really use in my school to help children feel safe, feel like they are in control, they know what's going on. We're not just going to spring something on them. And it's important because regulation is everything. If they are calm, they're at their optimal level for learning or engaging. If they know what's expected versus if all of a sudden someone comes and knocks on my door and says, you got to go, you're being evicted from your house, duh. I am going to have a crazy, huge reaction. I'm not going to understand where am I going to live? What's going on? Why did this happen? It is going to be something huge. That's a pretty intense example. But for your child, that's what it feels like sometimes when we spring stuff on them. Sometimes they might be go with the flow. But if we can support them and create an environment that they feel safe, we will be much more successful. So along with those questions to ask to make sure they understand, you may have seen a first then board. So a first then board is basically saying, first we're going to do math, then you get 5 minutes on the computer or something to motivate them to get through the activity or something that they might not want to do. That's the first kind. The second kind has all these 5 boxes at the bottom. And this is where teachers, or you can use it at home to give check marks to show that they're getting through things. So if I was using this in a speech session, I would say first work on sounds, then we'll play a game. And each box, every time they do a new word 5 times, we check the box. So they know really there's only 25 words. That's not that many. I can make it through. It'll go quick. And it really gives them the idea. Versus if I just put it up here and say first sounds, then game, they don't know how long this lasts. And that might really stress out some kids and they might show more behaviors for me. I do not always use first then boards in the sense that I am neurodiversity affirming and I don't want to force any child to do anything. However, sometimes things need to get done. If they have a motor speech disorder or something, we really have to work on those movements, work on those muscles to try to get correct sound production, but I'm going to do it through play. I'm going to do it in a much more relaxed manner than just sitting there and drilling it. Not saying there's anything wrong because students definitely need to be able to sit and learn to read and math. I understand that. But these are really good for when you have that relationship, you have that structure built with your child and you want to do something more focused. So say at home, they really have a hard time brushing their teeth. It is something that they just have to do. We got to brush those teeth. So first you brush your teeth, then you get to watch your favorite movie, or then you get to read books with mommy, or whatever their preferred activity is. They can see that, oh, okay, got to get through this, and then I get this. But another way you can look at it is you could give them their iPad if they wanted to watch something while they're brushing their teeth. And then they know, hey, I don't mind this because now I get to do what I want and brush my teeth. So there's kind of 2 schools of thought. Once again, I said, listen to what I'm saying, take what you don't want, keep what you do want. So you might be a person who really wants more structure. First you do this, then you get this. You might be more of a play-based person like me and think, okay, how can I make this all into an activity that gets what I need to get done, but also the kid can have enjoyment. Doesn't work for every situation, I will say that. But you will see these in your journey wherever you are. They use them a lot at school because there are demands and there are things that need to be done. Home can be a little more relaxed, but if your child thrives on routine, then first then boards might work at home too, because they might see, oh, hey, first I have to eat my dinner with my family, if that's important to you, then I get to do this activity. And it is a nice way of supporting the child to say, hey, this dinner is only going to be 5 minutes long because that's all your child can handle. And then they get to leave. So every minute you can check off and then slowly build up to them being able to sit with you at dinner time longer. Like I said, if that's important to you. The other thing you can use are visual timers. So this really helps. Like I said, with the dinner example, you could set the timer for how long it has to be. You also can use visual timers to support you when you have to transition from a preferred to a non-preferred task. So say your kid loves the playground. They want to stay at the playground all day, every day if they could, but you can't live there. So what are we going to do? About 10 minutes before it's time to go, we'll set the timer and say, hey, we have 10 more minutes. We got to go. 5-minute warning. We got to go. 2-minute warning. The timer runs all the way down to 0. Your kid has a meltdown. It's going to happen. Whether you listen to what I'm saying or not, it's going to happen. Probably has happened with 90% of all the parents out there, whether your child is neurodivergent or neurotypical. What's important then, if you've been using the first then boards, you might be able to structure the routine. So first playground, then popsicles. So they know, hey, I really don't want to leave this. I love this thing, but there is something good. And you get them home and you get them the popsicle, and then it is a much smoother transition. The visual timer going off is not always a magic pill for kids, but I do have a lot of kids that I work with who, when the timer goes off, they'll be like, oh, red center's done, timer's off. And they just know that guided access is a great thing with technology now, where you can put guided access on an iPad. And so the kid knows, and it will warn them a minute before it ends, that this is going to turn off and be locked. So then your child has to do it. Once again, if you've prepped it right, you could have iPad time, but then we get to go take a bath, and the bath is their favorite thing. You don't want to have 2 non-preferred activities back to back if you can help it. So what I mean then, if your child hates the bath, so now they have to give up their iPad, then they have to go in the bath. That's a really hard pill to swallow for some kids. So try to transition it. Maybe give up the iPad, then have dessert, then bath time. Once again, you're not going to be able to tailor every situation, but these visuals really support the language that you need, that the kids need to understand. And pictures and videos are the best way to do it because they're not processing words in the same way that you or I are processing words. Also, if they know, where do I go? What do I do? How long and what comes next? Those questions, if you can ask those to yourself, will really help hopefully decrease some of the behaviors you see, because the receptive understanding has gone up and they feel a little safe because they know what's happening. The last thing I want to talk about in this section is modeling. So we haven't talked about devices yet, but we will in the next lesson. But you really want to be modeling what language your child is using or you want them to use. So if I really want my child to be able to express using pictures, because right now they're non-speaking and I really don't know what they want. They're just always grabbing me or using gestures or crying or having a behavior, and they don't have any form of communication. So I'm like, I got to get pictures or something so they can start to communicate with me and we can see those behaviors decrease. I'm going to start modeling what I want them to do. So what I mean is, if your child is grabbing you and taking you to the fridge and pointing, they obviously want some food or something to eat. So you might have a picture. This is kind of like a communication board. This looks more like an AAC device. You could even make this on your phone. I mean, really, the technology we have is so great. You could take pictures of the food in your fridge, print it out, and paste it to the front of your refrigerator, and then they can point, oh, you want some milk. And not only are you going to model the language you want, but you're also going to point. So then if you do this enough, eventually what we hope to happen is that child is going to walk over to the refrigerator, point to milk as a way of communicating instead of dragging you and, and getting stressed out or having a behavior because you don't know what they want. You have now modeled what you want them to use. Obviously, the goal is always vocal speech if a child is capable of it. But we can't just expect them to start talking immediately if they have some differences in their brain, which the synapses, the connections in your brain, aren't connecting yet. We have to help them build those connections. So there might be a lack of connection. So until we can build those connections, let's find another way of communicating so we can decrease these behaviors. Modeling is often so overlooked, in my opinion, because we expect the child to use it, but we still use all verbal language. And that is where the gap is. The child isn't getting a chance to learn the way we want, what we want from them. Think of a baby. Would you expect a baby to ever start talking if nobody ever talked to the baby? No, they would probably just goo and gaw and make their noises, but they would never start putting sentences together because they'd never heard it. So you really want to be aware of the language you're using and model the language you want your child to using. I know everybody wants their baby to speak. I 100% get that and empathize with that, and I want that too. But that might not be the first step. We might need to use some of these other systems and model them to get them in place so your child can communicate effectively until they get the vocal speech. So that was a lot of information in this little lesson. Might be our longest one yet, guys. Thanks for hanging with me. So we really want to start using these visuals to support your child developing higher receptive language skills. We can't just keep talking at them and expect them they're going to magically pick it up one day. We need to support the learning, and making sure that we have an environment of trust is so huge. We want them to trust us and feel safe. This is their home. This is when you guys can make the biggest connections with them and have the biggest impact. And if you say, oh, the school does all that pictures and the school has the communication device, it might not help you at home. Actually, it won't help you at home because schools are limited. We can only do so much. If I only have 30-minute sessions with a child, I got to cram as much to that 30 minutes as I can. And there's not a lot of wiggle room to carry over those skills. So what do you think if I wanted you to speak Spanish as soon as possible? Would you want to work 30 minutes with me a couple of times a week? Or would you want to go home where everyone's speaking Spanish and everyone's learning Spanish and everyone's practicing Spanish? You're going to learn a lot faster by engaging in it in every environment, not just the school. Once again, I'm not trying to judge anybody because it is so stressful. It is so hard at home. And I know visuals can feel like, oh, one more thing we have to do. But there are amazing SLPs out there who will help you on your way. They can make visuals for you. I have sent numerous stuff home. I've worked with some great special educators that can help support your communication needs at home. We can make copies. Whatever we use at school, they can use at home too. First Then boards, you can write it on a sheet of paper right now and not have to have anything fancy or board maker or all these programs that are out there for professionals that parents don't necessarily have access to. So reach out, ask for help, and start trying to incorporate it as much as you can. Don't be overwhelmed. Start small. So if a time you're really struggling with your child to understand is in the morning, getting on the bus and going to school, then maybe get some visuals for you wake up. You have breakfast. You get dressed. That might help them get into that routine that you want them to be doing without you being like, put on your clothes, or having to dress them themselves and them running away from you. Give them a chance to understand and learn to tolerate. Getting dressed for school is a must. They have to do that. I get that. And if it's a battle every morning, there can be a way that we can try to help support you at home or from school at home. I've had many parents say, really struggling with this today. We're really struggling with this. So reach out, ask for help, pick out a time when you really feel that it can make the most impact. You don't need to do it 24/7. That would be exhausting. I get that. But dinner time. Try using visuals at dinner time for your child to be able to pick out or you model what foods they're eating. Oh, here's chicken on your plate. Here's French fries and an apple. Random dinner, but whatever. So you want to try to be modeling so then eventually they can hopefully pick up that expressively, which is where we're going next. So see me in the next lesson. Thanks for